So just imagine you're getting wheeled back to the operating room, and the doctors have already told you there is almost a 0% chance of survival. Your mind's going a million different places, and not only do you survive the experience, but you have what is called a death experience. Not a near death experience, but a literal death experience. And we're going to kind of get into Pam Reynolds' story, but I'd like to go over some of the other NDEs that I hear quite often. And one of them that I hear all the time, but once looking deep into it, I realize it's nothing like I ever thought it was, and that is when people's life flash before their eyes. So one of the coolest cases of a life review or life flashing before your eyes is Dr. George Ronania. Now, Dr. George has a MD and PhD in neurosciences, so he is a very qualified person to have this experience since he knows a lot about the brain. Well, this all kicks off back in the 1970s whenever the KGB was kind of a big deal, and he thinks that he had a hit out on him by the KGB. So Dr. George was walking down the road whenever a car ran off the road and hit him. Now, whenever the police and paramedics showed up, they pronounced him dead at the scene. I mean, he had no vitals, nothing going on, he wasn't breathing, no heart rate, absolutely nothing. So they just sent him straight off to the morgue. And whenever he gets to the morgue, his body's sitting there for 3 days, absolutely no signs of life. So when the doctor started cutting into him with a scalpel, he said it felt like somebody grabbed him and shoved him back into his body, and that's when he woke up, scaring him, the doctor, everybody involved with this case, because like I said, he was pretty much dead, no signs of life whatsoever. Now, he said that whenever he got shoved back into his body, he had a life review, or his life flashed before his eyes, but it wasn't exactly a beginning to end type deal. It was like he lived the whole thing instantly and at the same time. It was almost like time and space were kind of bent to allow him to experience all these things. He experienced all the emotions, he experienced the sights, the sounds, the feelings he had, and it was just odd because it wasn't like he pictured. Now, there are other cases very similar to this, and what I find fascinating is right before this happens to him, they say that time slows down. And now, it's not like it slows down for just a second or two, but it's like tens of seconds. So much so that whenever a professor was leading a bunch of students on a mountaineering climb, he ended up making a bad trip. He started falling, and it was like a 60-foot drop. He said that while he was falling, he was contemplating what he should do. Not only that, but he was like, well, maybe I should take my glasses off. Maybe I should leave them on. Are they going to get it broken? Should I put my arms down? I don't really know. I'm afraid that I'll get hurt, but what if I die? Because I have a lecture that I need to make in approximately 5 days, and he was going through all of these ideas, but he said it took forever for him to finally hit the ground. And then all of a sudden his life flashed before his eyes. And I find it just very interesting because you hear a lot of these cases, and the idea that I've kind of had about these is related to a lot of other experiences where people seem to leave their bodies whenever they're having some experiences, and they go to a place where they literally review their life and plan their next one for some sort of reincarnation type deal. I just find it like if that was a true thing, you would actually want to review your life that you lived. If you have eternity to spend living lives, you kind of want to see what really happened all at the end of it. Now, to jump over to Pam Reynolds' case, this one is interesting for the fact that she was technically legally dead. She had what is called an intracranial aneurysm, and it grew so large that it had a very large space in her brain. Now, the doctors knew that she had a very little chance of survival with this, so they decided to bring a doctor in and do a hypothermic cardiac arrest. Now, this is pretty interesting, and I didn't even know it was a thing. But what they do is they start lowering your body temperature, and they bring it around 50 degrees or 60 degrees. Pretty much they have to stop your blood flow. They drain all the fluid from your brain so they can get in there and work on it. But at this point, your heart's not working, your brain's not working, and they measure it to make sure that it's not working. There's no function in it. You're not breathing. You're not doing anything. You're technically dead. There's just no function to your body whatsoever. Well, while she's under this, she said that she experienced a out-of-body experience. So much so that she described to the doctor, she's like, yeah, I seen you using something like a bone saw, but it didn't look like a saw that I'd ever seen before. It looked like an electric toothbrush. It had a little dent in it. I seen you using it on me, which she was describing the bone saw the doctor was using. Not only that, but she heard the nurses over talking, and she's like, well, I guess I have little veins, according to this nurse. Now, none of this really kicked off until they fired up that bone saw and it released a note, it brought her to that area of consciousness. Now, she also said after she was done watching this procedure go on, she got visited by dead family members, and they took her to a different area. She couldn't really explain what it was. She said that it was just different, but it was extremely peaceful. So much so that the longer she was there, the more she wanted to stay, until her uncle was like, no, you cannot stay here. You will be visiting later on in life, but right now you cannot stay here. They're bringing you back to life. And she was putting up a fight to where her uncle in the spiritual realm was pretty much just shoving her back into her body, where she felt a very cold chill, like doing a ice bath. And I find that extremely fascinating. Now, there was an anesthesiologist that tried to debunk it, and he went over the files and said that from what he could tell, he didn't think that she was completely under or out of it at that point in time, and that maybe she was hearing them talk about things. The doctor that performed the surgery said, no, it matches way too close, and this is a pretty significant event. And I find this account of Pam extremely interesting, and there are so many different stories out there of near-death experiences. I could never cover all of them in one go. It's just not possible. There's thousands upon thousands where the doctors are even like, how did you know this is what was happening? Now, the general consensus is it's just not real. They're just hallucinating it, or they're picking up little details that they heard, and that's understandable, but it only takes one white crow to prove that all crows are not black. And one of these stories has to be a white crow. Anyways, I thought that was pretty cool. Now, I'm doing a ton of research on life after death, or more like consciousness outside of the body, to make one big video, and I keep finding these little stories while I'm doing this research, so that's kind of what I'm bringing to you. Now, if you want to see that in the future, feel free to subscribe. And, if you like the video, a little heart, or, a comment saying good job or thanks, or, I get a lot of you are terrible from people sometimes, but we could not do that, just something nice here or there. Anyways, it really helps me if y'all do that, and I'm trying to get to 2,000 subscribers because I think that would be awesome. I'm really trying to get to like 2 million so I can quit my day job, but we 2,000 is a nice short-term goal. Anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed that, and I look forward to doing more of these videos, and I hope you all look forward to seeing them, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.